Okay, everybody, I'm going to be working on a Bootstrap layout, and I've done videos on this before, so rather than walk through and slowly talk about what I'm doing, I'm just going to record it and possibly speed it up a little bit so you can say it and see how I do it, and then maybe talk about it. So we're going to take Bootstrap, we're going to use the files from here, and we're going to try to recreate the following sort of mockup. So a couple points I want to point out. One of the troubles with this particular mockup is we've got these background colors for each of these rows, from this gray to this light bluish gray, whatever, to white, to that, and there's no content in any of these. So one of the things is when it comes to the grid, I just want to focus more on where the content is. So I'm going to create a little kind of like gutters on either side, and the elements that contain these background colors will not have Bootstrap applied. But you'll notice there's some white over here, and then there's some gray over here. So if we really want to recreate all of that, we might have to add a couple extra components on here. So just keep that in mind. That's what I'm going to be doing. And then I'm going to be breaking down the grids in here. Just as a reminder in Bootstrap before I begin that you want to take a look at the grid system. And so let me just kind of walk you through just a couple things that you'll probably be noticing that I'm doing. And that is I'm going to be using the MD, call MD for medium device. This is a desktop layout that we're looking at. We're going to use that particular one. I think using large is just a little too wide of a device, which means you'll only get the columns at 1170 pixels wide. This one's a little more narrow. If you want to create the same layout for small devices, you can do it as a call SM for small, and then within 750 pixels. That may actually work in this particular layout. This particular one here could be small. So we can take a look and add that later. But here we go. You'll also notice me grabbing color codes here and there. So you'll see, for example, you've got that color yellow. So you'll see me using the color picker and getting some color codes for that. Let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to use the Atom browser. I already got my files set up. I got an HTML template sort of in place, style sheet ready to go. Hey, let's take a look at the folder just so you can see. And we're just going to stick the styles in here, and here we go. And start by getting the Bootstrap. Okay, I'm going to pause there and start talking about what I did. Okay, so a couple things you can see on here that hopefully you saw what I was doing here is a lot of it is taking the time to match the colors and mess around a lot with these. You know, you may not be at the point now where you know how to mess around a little bit, but one of the things you're going to notice I did is many times I try to do the least amount of markup. So like this button sign up, I ended up, you saw, I worked this code over for a while. Nothing was changing. And if you saw, I was looking, I was trying to see what changed this particular button in the Bootstrap project. And so let me just show you just real quick what happened here. So I'm trying to make changes to this particular button. So I played around with a bunch of different stuff, and one of the things you notice here is that this is specificity. You have this dot button group, greater than button, blah, 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 not, last child, not. There's a lot of class and pseudo selectors being used here, class being the dot, pseudo selector being the colon. And so there's a lot of that stuff going on, and it's great to know that. But when you want to make a change and it's getting in the way, sometimes you have to override it. And so I did what I like to call the nuclear option, and I try to avoid this whenever possible, and that is the hashtag. So hashtag sign up. I ended up changing sign up to be an ID, not a class. And then that worked for part of it, except for the border none. I think at that point I had to, actually it worked. Okay, so I could have just left it at sign up. So I am going to go back and take the button part off because each little addition of a selector is adding to the weight or the what they call the specificity of the selector. And so you can see what's going on there. So I got rid of the border and I got rid of the background image. And so anyway, but the point is, if you look here, let's take a look at our grid. A couple things that you should know. Number one, here's our div with the class of row, and in it we have a div with the class of call MD4, a div with the class of call MD8. And that is really the only grid I have so far. And that just blocks this site name from all of this. And then inside of the call MD8, I had to add a nav, because this is all part of the navigation. Some are buttons and some are other things. And one of the things is I wanted to move everything to the right. And Bootstrap has a thing called pull right. It doesn't work on all the items, but it worked on the nav bar. You saw me trying it out. What it basically does is it floats an item to the right. And I wanted those buttons to the right of the nav list, and so I had to actually drop them in first and do a pull right. Now, had I switched the order and not done a pull right, they would line up just normal, and it may actually have worked, but I just wanted to make sure that they erred on the side of being on the right-hand side of what's going on here. Plus, it'll make the layout look a lot better when it comes to the other elements that line up. And you'll see I've added some buttons. This is actually a button group, and that allowed me to connect these two buttons together. I technically probably could have got away without doing a button group, but then I couldn't pull it right, and there was just some other issues. I thought, you know, let's just do it as a button group. And then this right here is nav using nav pills, and as you can see, I had to go in and change the colors by selecting the hyperlink inside. To change the colors, you'll see what I had to do here. This is also that specificity. I started by just trying to do the main nav LI, and then I forgot I needed the A. So I added that, and then it still wasn't working, and so I had to add this class of main nav to the nav. Thereby, once I did that, it was all I needed to select it. So start with the simplest thing you can use, and then go more specific as you go from there. So that is my header, and I have just barely begun. I will say adding in nav bars does take a little extra time, and then when you want to override the styles that you're using, this was a Bootstrap thing, so I had to be careful in doing that. In future items, we will have some buttons here, and look, there's another sign up. 2 sign ups. I don't like that. That means I did the ID, and I might need to change that a little bit later. Be on the lookout for that in future videos. All right, until then, we'll see you around.